Greetings. I'd like to purchase your Happy's Pizza building in Jackson, Michigan. I've been looking at this building. I've been studying it. I've been, looking at it from multiple different ways. My name's Luke Smith, and I love to work on real estate. I like to figure things out. I like to use data to figure things out, and I like to go make them happen. So, this building I studied. I found on Crexy.com. I was talking to Brianna. Brianna, my hand's falling off the screen. Brianna's a broker on this one. Answered the phone, answered a bunch of questions. My partner and I were asking questions and asking about this one, and talking about Jackson, Michigan. I was born and raised in Eaton Rapids, Michigan, just barely north of Jackson, Michigan. My mom used to work at the one of the prisons in town here. She was a teacher. When I was in grade school, she would teach and different. She did a lot of teaching, and she would go to Jackson and different schools and prison scenarios. I think Jackson, I always knew Jackson because it had like one of the largest prisons. I always thought it was the largest prison in the world, but one of the largest prisons in the U.S. anyway. I think a couple, Louisiana, Oklahoma or something, outdid them over time. But in the past, it used to be some of the largest prison in the world, or largest prison in the U.S. And so there's a lot of people and business that happens around that. And Jackson has been, it's had some crime in the past, but I think it's calmed down a lot. And there's business happening there. So I've been studying the statistics of what kind of business is happening there. I like to look at cell phone traffic. I like to look at levels of business. Look at receipts and transactions that are happening in other shops around town. Who's selling what, how fast, how much, because that means I could figure out what kind of rent that they could pay and they could afford to pay. And to use a building like this, who fits in a building like this? Who's the new tenant? I would like to go find a new tenant for this building. I've worked on numerous different retail shops over time, and specifically for pizza. And, I've got a pretty good idea of which clients can pay what in the pizza space and who's looking for new locations. And I'd like to present it to them. I'd like to show it to them. I'd like to grab them by the ear, drag them over here and say, this is your new shop. You should set up here. There's a bunch of people in a couple mile radius that can order pizzas on the phone or call you or come over here and pick up their pizza. There's a good population of people here to sell pizza to. There's a couple other pizza shops in town that are doing really good numbers. To me, that says there should be another pizza shop that could do really nice numbers out of this location. I don't think it's how many pizzas they sell is a version of why this shop's turned down or shut down. So let's jump to the next slide. I found maybe I gotta get it out of the way. So some of the top selling shops by ranking in the immediate area. There was two different Subways. The Subways in the area are doing amazing. And I just put some statistics on the screen just to give you an idea of who I am, what kind of stuff I like to look at and study on these shops more than the actual numbers. Subway on average does, and Subway's got a lot of locations, right? They do on average $420,000 of sales per unit. And a lot of Subways are in strip centers or really low rent district kinds of small rinky-dink shops or inside a bigger store or something. They're not usually standalone locations like your building might be, but if they're doing enough business, they can pay the rent to take on a standalone building in some markets. But so they're doing $420,000 averages across like 10,000 locations or 9,000 locations or whatever Subway has. Excuse me. And that supports rent of about $42,000 a year, using a basic rule of thumb in the retail space of like 10 cents on a dollar, like, rent of 10% of your average unit sales. The banks will still bank with you, but as your rent starts getting above that 10% of your sales, the banks slower and less likely to bank with you, right? So we're taking the bank's kind of guidelines of where it works and doesn't work for these kinds of shops to come up with how much they can pay in rent, right? And so I like to study that on lots of different names, and I like to look at the level of business that's happening in the area and apply that to this location and say, okay, if your brand goes here and you usually do these kinds of sales in this kind of marketplace, then you should do those kinds of sales in this kind of marketplace here, and then you should be able to afford to pay this kind of rent and back into how much rent you can charge them for a location like this, and so everybody wins, right? Another one, just a different name in the same marketplace, selling very similar to the same product, is Jimmy John's. And Jimmy John's doesn't have as many locations as Subway. They're a little bit choicer and more select on their locations, if you will. And so when they set up locations, they've got higher average unit sales than Subway. Excuse me. In today's market, Jimmy John's is growing really well. And so their average unit sales is $900 to $1 million per location. And so they could come up with a lot more rent. For selling the same stuff, they could pay more like $95,000 a year. That's more than double what Subway is able to pay. And I didn't like come up with this on purpose. I found this out by pitching these kinds of shops to lots of different people, and then they come and say, yeah, I want to go for it. And how much can you pay in rent? And someone like Subway can't make the bill, but somebody like Jimmy John's for this kind of location could. And so I've done that with numerous names and numerous different locations, and I've created my own data sets on how to make these happen. And that's more about who I am and what I like to do. I like to do that, and then I like to reach out to those names of who goes here, who has the horsepower to pay rent to make the numbers work on a location like this, and say, I'll resurface the shop, I'll change the colors, turn it into your brand, make it your shop. How much does it cost? Let's figure it out. Let's come up with some numbers. Let's make it happen, and let's lease the shop to you. And so in my offer, I'm asking for some time. I'm asking for some time to work on it. I want to work on your building. I want to reach out to those people, and I want to present to them why this is a good location for them and why this is, the rent that I propose that they pay makes sense and it works based on the sales in the area. And they can do it. When they say, okay, yes, let's go for it, I would like to close with you as fast as possible and run with them, fixing up the building, getting them in there, cash flowing the thing out into the future from there. And so if you're okay with that, if you're in agreement with that, please take a look at my offer. That's why I'm asking for some time to work on this building. That's what I would like to do. My name is Luke Smith. You can look at my YouTube videos going back like 10 years or something of, close to 1,500 different videos talking about all kinds of different land deals. I've got comments, good and bad, all over the place. People have bought land from me, people have sold land from me, people that have leased deals, people that have partnered with me, people that in lots of different ways. I say good and bad because with the number of transactions that I've had, it would be pretty much near impossible to have 100% positive ones, and a couple negative ones means it's real, right? That's what I look for when I'm looking at reviews. If they're all positive, they're fake. So that's more about who I am. You can find my transactions in most every county around and most every state in the country. Bought and sold properties, all over the place. Or ask me, and I'll point out some examples. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Hope to hear from you soon. Thanks. Bye.